All right, so let's get started. I'm here to tell you a little bit about how we use Ember at OTA Insight, and of course, about the company as well. So this is what the agenda for me is going to look like. So a short company intro. I'm going to talk about why we use Ember.js right now, and then a little timeline of what I call interesting experiences that we had with Ember. And of course, at the end, room for questions. But maybe first, an introduction of myself. My name is Pauw. I'm an engineering manager and the front-end chapter lead here at OTA Insight. I've been working with Ember for about years, and that's also how long I've been working here, coincidentally. You can find my contact info at the bottom as well if you want to send me questions or whatever about the talk or whatever. So yeah, that's it. Also, if you see me turning red a little bit, that's just the nerves, so don't worry about that. And next up, the company. Let me start maybe with the mission. So the mission is to help the hospitality industry visualize and leverage data for business success. So let me maybe break that down a little bit so you can really understand what we're doing. So help the hospitality industry. What that means is like our clients are, it goes from individual property owners like you would see on Airbnb to really large chains like Hilton or Accor. And what does the leverage data part mean? Let me first maybe give you a little bit of an explanation first. So today, if you want to book something, you'll most likely go to booking.com or TripAdvisor or Airbnb. What we actually provide is like we aggregate all of that data and we provide actionable insights to our users by dashboard and the like. Some of that looks like this. This is like the current products we have. Maybe a quick intro to all of them, but like Rate Insight, this is where you're going to view your pricing versus your competition. Market Insight is where you can see the near future for your market and you want to adjust your strategy to that. If you look at Revenue Insight, it's more about like seeing where your revenue comes from and potentially spotting opportunities through that. And then Parity is like all of these OTAs are spread around. How do you make sure your strategy is followed by every single OTA? That is what dashboard is for. And of course, we could use your help making it greater. This is the obligatory we're hiring slide. So we are looking for people. We're looking for people building our new products. We're also looking for somebody who could help us build out our design system. Is something we're currently working on, and I'll also highlight that a bit more in the later slides. So if you're interested, come talk to me, send me a message, or it's all on the company website as well. Next up, why do we use Ember.js? Put three reasons here that were easiest to explain. It's going to be scaling, the relatively easy updates, and developer experience. Also some flagrant self-promotion, but I wrote a blog article about that as well. You can find the link in the slides. But let's get into the details maybe. The first Ember app we wrote was in 2014. It was the really rough first version, is maybe what I'm going to call it. We were still a startup back then. And then in 2016, we were like, maybe we should add some best practice to it. So we did a full rewrite in 2016. And that's still the code base we use today. So I would say that that rewrite has been very successful. And I like to say, at least, like without Ember, we wouldn't have gotten this far this fast. I think the convention over configuration principle that Ember dictates is really like what helps us so far, because there's no discussion on what to do. It's like, this is the way. And also helps us like onboard people. I'm going to come back to that as well. But this is what really helped us a lot, I would say, over the years. So like I mentioned, 6 years later, still the same code base, but with a lot more products. Like we started out with the application. We didn't really think about multiple products, but I think by now we're looking at 6 and possibly more in the future. And also the developers. So what started out with 2 when I joined, at least. We are now at 14 people working in this code base, so that's quite a lot. And at least for now, we don't really spot many issues. But let me give you a sense of scale as well. So this is what the products actually look like. So this is Rate Insight, what I mentioned before. Like you can see your prices versus your competitors. Color coding helps you with making decisions. This is like, there's more to it than this. But just to give you a quick impression, then we have Revenue Insight. This dashboard, like it handles a lot of data where users can make their decisions from and see where everything comes from. Then we have Parity Insight. Like I mentioned, you're gonna want to spot like issues here, like with your distribution, if you want to. Market Insight, where you look at the market more than instead of like your individual competitors. And last but not least, like we were getting all of these products and we were saying, okay, maybe we should build like a landing page that brings together all of these insights. And that is what the overview is right now. But of course, there are more products coming. So I couldn't show those just yet. They're still in development, but yeah, there's more coming and we'll probably see more of us later. Then the updates. I was checking through the code for these slides and seeing like, okay, when did we actually do these updates? And I kind of noticed like every major version was upgraded within the year of release. So I would say that's pretty good. Ember makes it easy for you to do these updates, like with the code mods. It has, and it also allows you like gradual adoption. Like the only cutoff point is like usually the major version update, by which point we've already made a plan to like do these upgrades ourselves. So I would say that it's been a major asset in like keeping our code base up to date as well. Like there's no dark hole where you don't dare to venture because the code is so outdated that you don't really know what it does. Like everything is new standards. Okay, there's still some parts where we use computed instead of tracked or whatever, but that's the worst of it, if I can say so. And the next, developer experience. Like we have onboarded a lot of people and we do notice like people get started pretty quickly with Ember. Of course, there are like few things they stumble over in the beginning. Like what I hear from most people is the handlebars. That's not always super clear and like how you use it, like especially if you come from a React environment where you can just use JavaScript in your template. So I can understand that. And then the Ember magic, as people have started calling it here, like Ember does a lot of things for you automatically. And sometimes it's not super clear like where this is coming from. So there are two things that, yeah, people don't find that easy, but a big pro of the framework, the batteries are included. Like people can just get started. Like you don't need to think about how do you do network requests or how do you do routing or whatever. That's all just in there. People can get started. And the convention as well, make sure that you can understand each part of the code base. Like you don't need to see like, oh, how does this team do that? And how does that team do that? No, it's all pretty much the same structure, pretty much the same code, which makes it a lot easier to understand. And at least with the Octane update recently, like there's very little framework specific code. So even if you don't know Ember, if you just know JavaScript, you can read the code and at least have a sense of what the code is doing. So that's also very important. And those are the main reasons like why we use Ember. Now let's get to the second part. So the timeline, these are the topics I'm gonna discuss, but let me maybe put it into a little bit of an easier view. So this is an actual timeline. So like I mentioned before, V1, that's in 2014, then 2016 was the rewrite. In 2017, we started building our new product, Revenue Insight, and we were like, new product, maybe engines are useful here. I'm gonna go into details a bit later. Then 2017 also, we started, hey, don't we need tests? Like we were still a startup back then, we didn't really think about it. So yeah, we added testing and then we completely forgot about it until 2019, where we started the second version of our tests. Then we started in 2019 as well, like on our design system. That was still early version and went to a couple of iterations to get where we are now. But then 2020, we got cold feet a little. Like we were like, is Ember still really the right choice for us? I would start looking at other frameworks. I would build a prototype in Vue specifically to see like if the grass really is greener on the other side. But then reassured after that prototype, we started the migration to Octane in earnest in 2021. And then by 2022, we were like, hey, didn't we forget about the tests? And then we did our final version of our testing framework at that time. So now each of them in a little bit more detail. Ember engines, like I mentioned, started in 2017, but it only lasted till 2020. We were initially attracted by like the lazy loading it provided for products. Also like the ability to break up your code into smaller pieces, which is all great, but we forgot we were still a startup back then and things needed to move quickly. We did notice like an overhead for like the small team we were. We like 4 or 5 people at that time. Wasn't really worth it to use engines, so this is why we dropped it as well at a later stage. Also, the engines add-on caused us to like had to delay major updates. So eventually, once we got wind of Embroider, we decided, okay, that's gonna be a better choice. Like especially the lazy loading, it's also now explicitly mentioned on the website. Engines is not there to fix that. So yeah, that is the engines part. And then another thing we had, like when we started building Revenue Insight, that was in 2017. This page has a lot of data it needs to show. The thing we really mentioned is like with Ember data, it doesn't really work that well. There was like a lot of initial data coming in that, yeah, we just noticed like the load was higher, and then there was a lot of filtering going on in Revenue Insight, so that means a lot of additional requests, a lot of additional models being made and added to the store. You could really see that adding up. So we decided to not do Ember data there and just use like Ajax and like use the objects as they come in. It's a benefit that you don't have to use Ember data in each single part, but we did really notice like not using it, you see how much it does for you, like Ember data, and like there was a lot we had to do ourselves now, and looking at the code now, I think, yeah, people find it pretty complex. We also built a prototype recently, actually using Ember data, because there have been the performance improvements and the, yeah, I don't know which version of Ember 4 point whatever, but there have been those performance improvements. And we do notice the speed is almost equal to like the strategy we use now. So right now, if we were to switch, it would actually be a good option, and that kind of shows like that the development of Ember, at least to me, is going in the right direction. So that is that part. Then the Vue prototype. So like I mentioned, in 2022, we were like, Ember, we were seeing like some things we were struggling with, like performance of our application, and especially community as a bigger part. I think we all know Ember has a smaller community than most applications, than most frameworks, sorry. So what we did is like we were gonna just try it out and see what happens. So we built 2 identical applications, one in Vue and one in Ember. You might wonder, sorry, why we chose Vue. We were thinking like React is also a good option, but the syntax there was not really known to us at that time, so it would be hard to make a fair comparison, because like, yeah, we don't really know that much. Well, there was experience with Vue in the framework, in the team, sorry. So that's what we went with those 2. And maybe like what did we evaluate? Mainly these 4 metrics. So developer experience, scalability, performance, and community. What we noticed with developer experience, like we noticed, okay, Vue, that's going to be pretty okay. It's going to be similar as working in Ember. We could get used to it. Scalability as well, we were using Nuxt at the time to like make a fair comparison, because like otherwise, yeah, you're going to have to make a lot of choices at the start. So that was also fine. Then we went to community, and while undeniably Vue had the larger community at the time, it was very fragmented, and it was very hard to see like, okay, where's Vue going as a framework? What is like the channel direction that is like right? Not sure if that's the right way to say it, but yeah, we noticed issues we were having with Ember, like add-ons not being maintained. Those were exactly the same in Vue, except for there were like 2 million of the add-ons, and you didn't know which one you wanted to use. So that was, yeah, not really a plus point for Vue in our opinion back then. And then we come to performance. I'm going to show you a little slide here where this is basically the test we run and the results we got on average of comparing Vue with Ember. What we did is like we built a table, but this is maybe the more interesting one, like the regular benchmark. This was also actually our first experience with Glimmer. Like that was the new kid on the block, and we didn't really know like what it was capable of back then. So we built like a component in Ember, a component in Vue, and Glimmer as well, and then one template only, just to compare like how fast this would be. And while you notice like Ember and Vue, okay, Vue is definitely faster, but the Glimmer was also a lot faster. So we were like, okay, if we're going to switch to Glimmer anyway, it's not worth switching to Vue. So the conclusion of that was like, okay, well, some things are good in Vue and some things are good in Ember. There's no real reason to switch, as of course, like switching frameworks, that comes with a cost as well. And this was a definite no. So on to the next thing, our design system. Yeah, it's not that big of a slide, but we started with it in 2019. It was like the first version. Like I said before, went to a couple of iterations to get like what was right for us. Before the design system, there was Ember Paper, which is what we use as a library to like, yeah, get some form of consistency across the application. Fortunately, that library was also not super maintained, and updates were sometimes slow to appear. So what we did is like, okay, we're gonna try and do this ourselves. And we chose actually not for Ember for the design system, we chose for web components at that time. We really felt like, okay, if there is a time in the future where we want to use these components in other places, in other frameworks, we should have something that really, yeah, enables that. So we chose Stencil.js, which is like a way to, yeah, you write the components in JSX basically, and then translates to web components, which has worked well for us for the basics. We are like kind of struggling right now with the more complex ones, and these are turning into Ember components automatically. There's also like some issue with like how web components render within Ember, especially if you do certain things like charting. I'm sure if you talk to some of the people from the team here, they can talk all about it. And if you're wondering why there's a picture of stars here, our design system is called James Webb, and this is one of the pictures of that telescope. Then Octane, that was a big one. Like we knew it was coming. 2021, we made an actual plan to like do all of the migrations to angle brackets, to class syntax, to Glimmer components. Most of that was fairly easy, like with the code mods. The Glimmer components was a bit tougher. If you want like a really detailed version on how we did that, I suggest the talk from Inyas, who is also part of the team here. He like really in depth laid out like how we did it, and we are nearing completion of that like Glimmer transformation. So like we are almost completely on Glimmer components right now. And then testing. Like I mentioned before, we started 2017. We're like, okay, Mirage and QUnit, it's the way to go. It's like what is part of the framework, or like what you see the most at least. But we kind of noticed like over time, okay, Mirage has its overhead. You need to define anything. We are using dashboards, so there's like a lot of models and a lot of complexity and like how that set up. We were basically rebuilding our backend and our frontend for that, and that was not really the way to go. So we stopped doing that. Version 2 then came with Poly.js. I'm not sure if you know the library. It's basically a way to replay your API requests, which is very handy. I definitely recommend that. So it became an easy way to like write a test, get the right data, and then it's just stored in a file, and you can just replay it whenever you want. We also switched to Mocha then instead of QUnit because we felt it was better, but in the end that turned out not to be true. So version 3 went back to QUnit and also added Percy for visual testing. And if you want an in-detailed look on that, Inyas has done an Emberfest talk, it's more correct on that, and I definitely suggest you check that out. That has all the details you ever want and more than I could fit in this presentation. So that is it for the timeline, but there's of course a future as well. So what's next for us? We are looking into like transitioning to TypeScript code base, especially since we are scaling, like code base is growing bigger. We think that is the logical next step. So this is something that we are looking into right now, like how we're going to do that. Of course, Embroider adoption is going to be important for the future as well. We are, like several of our apps are already on Embroider. Of course, like the main one, still some issues with that. But we do plan like somewhere within the year, hopefully, to make that complete switch. And then of course, like, yeah, Polar is probably going to be the next big thing in Ember. So you're looking at like single file components and stuff like that. It's going to be really interesting to see what comes out of that. It's something we're keeping a close eye on to see like, okay, when should we adopt? When can we transition to those newer things? And that is a bit of what I had to say. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the talk.